The sky above New York City turned dark as massive alien ships descended, blotting out the sun. The ground shook with a deep rumble, and people ran in all directions, screaming in fear. The ships were enormous, their metallic surfaces gleaming like polished mirrors. They hovered silently for a moment before unleashing a deafening roar that echoed through the streets. This was it, the invasion humanity had always feared, but never truly believed would happen. The invaders, known as the Vraxians, wasted no time. Beams of light shot down from their ships, striking buildings and vehicles, reducing them to rubble. Panic spread like wildfire as people tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The Vraxians seemed unstoppable, their advanced technology far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Fighter jets scrambled into the air, firing missiles at the alien ships, but the weapons simply bounced off their shields, useless. Amid the chaos, Alex Carter stood frozen on a street corner, his hands trembling. He wasn't a soldier or a hero. He was just a mechanic who fixed drones for the local defense force. His job was supposed to keep him safe, tucked away in workshops and labs. But now, standing in the middle of an alien invasion, he felt completely exposed. The noise was overwhelming, a mix of screams, explosions, and the eerie hum of alien engines. As Alex tried to pull himself together, something caught his eye, a small movement near a pile of debris. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he saw it again. A tiny, furry creature was cowering under the rubble, its wide eyes filled with fear. Alex hesitated. Everyone else was running away, trying to save themselves. What was the point of stopping for a stray dog? But something about the animal tugged at him. It looked so helpless, so alone. Taking a deep breath, Alex knelt down and carefully reached for the creature. "Hey there, little guy," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the noise around them. The dog didn't resist. Instead, it wagged its tail weakly and licked Alex's hand. Despite everything happening around him, Alex couldn't help but smile. "You're just a pup, aren't you?" he muttered. He scooped the dog up and held it close, shielding it from the chaos. The dog was smaller than a loaf of bread, with soft fur and big, curious eyes. For a moment, Alex forgot about the destruction around him. The dog seemed oddly calm, almost as if it understood what was happening, or maybe it was just too scared to react. Alex knew he couldn't stay on the street. The Vraxians were everywhere, and staying out in the open was suicide. He quickly made his way to an abandoned subway station he'd used as a workshop. The place was cluttered with tools, spare parts, and half-finished projects, but it was safe for now. Once inside, Alex set the dog down on a makeshift bed of old blankets. "I'll figure out what to do with you later," he said, though he wasn't sure if the dog could even understand him. That night, as the sounds of destruction continued above, Alex sat beside the dog, watching it sleep. He decided to name it Max, after an old friend who loved animals. Max seemed content enough, curling up in a ball and snoring softly, but there was something strange about him. When Alex absent-mindedly petted Max's head, the dog's fur began to glow faintly, casting a soft light across the room. Alex froze, staring at the glowing patterns that pulsed gently under his fingers. "What are you?" Alex whispered, more to himself than to the dog. Max didn't answer, of course, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this little pup was more than he appeared to be. Little did Alex know, Max was about to change everything, for better or worse. The next morning, Alex woke up to find Max sitting quietly beside him, his head tilted as if waiting for something. The glow from the night before was gone, but Alex couldn't stop thinking about it. He decided to run a few tests, just to see if he could figure out what made Max so unusual. Using some old equipment from his workshop, Alex began examining the dog's fur and behavior. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Max was playful, wagging his tail and sniffing around the room like any other curious pup. But then something strange happened. When Alex accidentally brushed Max's fur against one of his broken drone prototypes, the device suddenly sprang to life. Its lights flickered on, and its rotors spun briefly before shutting down again. Alex stared in disbelief, his heart racing. "Did you do that?" he asked, looking at Max. The dog simply wagged his tail and barked softly, as if proud of himself. Over the next few hours, Alex conducted more experiments. He discovered that Max had an uncanny ability to interact with machines. Broken gadgets would spark back to life when Max touched them, and even the most stubborn piece of equipment seemed to respond to his presence. It wasn't random, either. Max appeared to know exactly what he was doing. His glowing patterns returned whenever he activated something, pulsing brighter with each success. Alex couldn't wrap his head around it. How could a dog, no matter how smart, have such advanced capabilities? It didn't make sense. As he sat there, staring at Max, a thought crossed his mind. What if Max wasn't just a dog? What if he was something else? Before Alex could dwell on the idea too much, he heard footsteps echoing through the subway tunnels. Someone was coming. Panic gripped him as he quickly hid Max behind a pile of crates. A moment later, a woman appeared at the entrance of the workshop. She was tall and sharp-featured, with short brown hair and a determined expression. Her name was Rachel Monroe, and she was a journalist who had been covering the alien invasion. Rachel scanned the room, her eyes landing on Alex. "You're hard to find," she said, stepping closer. "I've been tracking rumors about someone hiding underground. People say you might have information about the Vraxians." Alex frowned, unsure whether to trust her. "I don't know anything," he lied. "Just trying to stay alive." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because I saw you carrying something last night. Something small. A dog, maybe." Alex's stomach sank. Had she seen him with Max? He glanced toward the crates, hoping Max would stay quiet. "It's just a stray," he said finally. "Nothing special." Rachel crossed her arms. "If it's not special, why are you hiding it?" Reluctantly, Alex led Rachel to where Max was hiding. The dog peeked out from behind the crates, his tail wagging cautiously. Rachel knelt down, studying him closely. "He doesn't look like any dog I've ever seen," she said after a moment. "What's his story?" Alex hesitated, but eventually told her about the strange things Max could do. The glowing, the repairs, the way he seemed to understand technology. Rachel listened intently, her eyes widening with every detail. "This changes everything," she said when he finished. "We need to figure out where he came from." Together, they began researching Max's origins. Rachel used her connections to dig up classified reports about the Vraxians, while Alex focused on analyzing Max's DNA. Late into the night, they worked side by side, piecing together fragments of information. What they found was astonishing. Max's genetic makeup contained elements unlike anything found on Earth. Certain markers matched materials only discovered in deep space, materials linked to the Vraxians. "He's not from here," Rachel said, her voice filled with awe. "They must have brought him, or created him." Alex looked at Max, who was curled up asleep nearby. "If that's true, why is he here? And why does he act so normal?" Rachel shook her head. "I don't know. But one thing's for sure. The Vraxians want him back. That message they broadcast yesterday. Unleash the beast. It has to be about him." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. If the aliens were searching for Max, then keeping him safe just became a lot harder. But as he watched the little dog sleep peacefully, he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let anyone take Max away, not without a fight. The next day, the city was eerily quiet. The Vraxians had stopped their attacks, and for a moment, it felt like the invasion had paused. But Alex and Rachel knew better. The silence was deceptive, a calm before an even bigger storm. They spent most of the morning going over everything they had learned about Max. The glowing patterns, the connection to machines, the alien DNA. It all pointed to one conclusion. Max wasn't just a stray dog. He was something far more important. As they worked, Rachel brought up the broadcast from the previous day. "You remember what Commander Ziller said, right?" she asked, her voice low. "Unleash the beast." "That has to mean Max. But why call him a beast? He's just a harmless little pup." Alex frowned, scratching his head. Maybe they don't know how he really is. Or maybe they're trying to scare people into handing him over. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Either way, we can't ignore it. If they're looking for him, they'll find us eventually. We need to figure out what Max can do, and fast." That afternoon, they decided to test Max's abilities further. Alex set up a series of experiments in the workshop, using old gadgets and broken equipment. Max seemed eager to help, trotting around the room and sniffing at each item. When Alex placed him near a damaged radio, the device sparked to life, its static-filled speakers crackling with sound. Next, they tried a tablet with a shattered screen. Within seconds, the cracks disappeared, and the screen lit up as if brand new. But it wasn't just about fixing things. As the experiments continued, Alex and Rachel noticed something else. Max could manipulate energy. When he touched certain objects, they emitted faint pulses of light or heat. Once, when Alex accidentally dropped a wrench near Max, the dog emitted a small burst of energy that knocked the tool across the room. It was clear that Max's powers went beyond simple repairs. He had the potential to be much more. Despite their excitement, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Every time Max used his abilities, he seemed to grow tired, his glowing patterns dimming until he needed to rest. "We have to be careful," Alex told Rachel. "If we push him too hard, he might get hurt." Rachel agreed but reminded him of the bigger picture. "We don't have a choice, Alex. If the Vraxians are coming for him, we need to know what he's capable of. For all we know, he might be the only thing standing between us and total destruction." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Commander Ziller appeared on every screen in the city. His massive form filled the displays, his shimmering scales glinting under artificial lights. His voice was deep and commanding, sending chills through anyone who heard it. "Humans," he began, his tone dripping with disdain. "Your resistance is futile. You cannot hide what belongs to us. Unleash the beast or face annihilation." The message sent waves of fear through the survivors. People whispered about the beast, imagining monstrous creatures lurking in the shadows. No one suspected that the so-called beast was a tiny, friendly dog hiding in an old subway station. Alex turned off the screen, his jaw clenched. "They're getting impatient," he muttered. "It's only a matter of time before they start searching everywhere." Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll be ready. Max isn't just some weapon. They don't understand him. He's smart, gentle, and loyal. Whatever they want him for, it's not good." Max, sensing their tension, padded over and rested his head on Alex's lap. Alex sighed, running his fingers through the dog's soft fur. "We'll protect you, buddy," he said softly, "no matter what happens." For now, Max was safe. But both Alex and Rachel knew the peace wouldn't last. Sooner or later, the Vraxians would come knocking. And when they did, Alex and Rachel would have to be prepared to fight back. With Max by their side, they hoped they stood a chance. But against an alien army, hope was a fragile thing. The days that followed were tense. Alex and Rachel worked tirelessly, trying to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the Vraxians. They knew it was only a matter of time before the aliens discovered Max's location. Every sound from the tunnels outside made them jump, and every shadow seemed like a potential threat. But despite their fear, they couldn't help but marvel at Max's growing abilities. The little dog was becoming stronger, his energy pulses more controlled and powerful. One evening, as Alex tinkered with an old drone, Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor, typing furiously on her laptop. She had been digging deeper into classified files, searching for any mention of Max or anything similar to him. "I think I found something," she said suddenly, breaking the quiet of the workshop. Alex looked up, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Rachel turned the screen toward him. It showed a blurry image of what appeared to be a small creature surrounded by strange machinery. The caption beneath the picture read, *Project Nexus. Biological Interface Prototype *. "This looks like Max," Rachel explained. "It's part of a leaked report about experiments conducted by the Vraxians. They'd been trying to create living weapons, beings that can connect with technology and control it." Alex frowned. "So Max isn't just some random experiment. He's part of a bigger plan." Rachel nodded grimly. "It seems that way. The report says they wanted to use these creatures to infiltrate enemy systems and disable defenses, but something went wrong. There's no mention of what happened after that." Alex glanced at Max, who was curled up in a corner, sound asleep. No wonder they're so desperate to get him back. If he really is one of their prototypes, they'll stop at nothing to capture him. Rachel closed her laptop and leaned back, rubbing her temples. "We need to figure out how to keep him safe. Hiding isn't going to work forever. Sooner or later, they'll find us." Just then, Max stirred, lifting his head and looking toward the entrance of the workshop. His ears perked up, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Alex and Rachel exchanged worried glances. "What is it, boy?" Alex asked, standing up cautiously. Before Max could respond, a voice called out from the shadows, "Don't worry, it's just me." A man stepped into the dim light, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. It was Daniel, one of Rachel's colleagues from the news agency. He was tall and lanky, with messy blonde hair and glasses that reflected the faint glow of the workshop lights. "Daniel." Rachel stood up, her tone sharp. "What are you doing here?" "I followed you," Daniel admitted, lowering his hands. "I saw you sneaking around the city and thought you might have something big." Looks like I was right. His eyes darted to Max, who was now sitting alertly, watching the newcomer with suspicion. Alex stepped protectively in front of Max. "You shouldn't be here," he said firmly. "It's not safe." Daniel ignored him, focusing instead on Rachel. "You've got to let me help. Whatever this thing is, it's huge. Imagine the story we could break. If we play our cards right, we could change everything." Rachel shook her head. "This isn't about stories, Daniel. This is about survival. If the wrong people find out about Max, it's over." But Daniel wasn't listening. His gaze lingered on Max, calculating. "You don't understand. We could use this. The government would pay anything for information like this. Think about it. We'd be heroes." Max let out a soft whine, sensing the tension in the room. Alex knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his back. "He's not a weapon or a bargaining chip," Alex said coldly. "He's a living being, and we're not handing him over to anyone." Daniel sighed, clearly frustrated. "Fine, but you're making a mistake. You can't fight the Vraxians alone. Mark my words, you'll regret this." With that, he turned and disappeared back into the darkness of the tunnels. Alex and Rachel stood in silence, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. "Do you think he'll keep quiet?" Alex asked finally. Rachel shook her head. "No, he'll sell us out the first chance he gets." Alex clenched his fists. "Then we need to move. Fast." As the night wore on, Alex and Rachel packed up their supplies, preparing to leave the workshop. Max stayed close, his glowing patterns flickering faintly, as if he understood the urgency of the situation. They didn't know where they were going or how long they could stay ahead of their enemies, but one thing was certain: they would do whatever it took to protect Max, even if it meant running for the rest of their lives. The next morning, Alex and Rachel moved quickly, gathering everything they could carry. They didn't have much, just a few tools, some food, and Max's favorite blanket, but it was enough to keep them going for a while. The workshop had been their safe haven, but now it felt like a trap. Daniel's visit had made that clear. Every second they stayed put brought the fractions closer. As they packed, Max seemed unusually alert. His glowing patterns flickered faintly, and his ears twitched at every sound from the tunnels. "He knows something's wrong," Alex said, glancing at the dog. "We need to find a new place to hide." Rachel nodded, her face pale with worry. "There's an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It's abandoned, and no one goes there anymore. If we can make it there, we might be able to lay low for a while." They left the workshop just as the first light of dawn filtered through the cracks in the subway ceiling. The tunnels were dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of rust and decay. Max trotted ahead, his nose pressed to the ground as if he were sniffing out danger. Alex kept one hand on a wrench he'd grabbed for protection, while Rachel carried a flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. It wasn't long before they heard voices echoing through the tunnels. At first, they thought it was Daniel again, but the voices were deeper, harsher. Alien voices. Alex froze, his heart pounding. "They're here," he whispered. Rachel grabbed his arm, pulling him into a narrow alcove. Max followed silently, crouching low beside them. A group of Vraxian soldiers marched past, their armored forms gleaming in the dim light. They moved with purpose, scanning the area with strange devices that emitted soft hums. Alex held his breath, praying they wouldn't notice the trio hiding in the shadows. Once the soldiers passed, Rachel exhaled sharply. "That was too close. We need to move faster." They hurried through the tunnels, sticking to the darkest corners and avoiding open spaces. Max stayed close, his glowing patterns dimmed, as if he knew they needed to stay hidden. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the surface. The city above was eerily quiet, the streets littered with debris and abandoned cars. Smoke hung in the air, a reminder of the destruction the Vraxians had left behind. The warehouse was farther than they expected, and by the time they arrived, the sun was high in the sky. It was a crumbling building, its windows shattered, and walls covered in graffiti. But inside, it was dry and empty, a perfect hiding spot. They set up camp in a corner, using crates and old tarps to create a makeshift shelter. For the next few days, Alex and Rachel focused on training Max. They wanted to understand the limits of his abilities and how to use them to protect themselves. Max proved to be a quick learner. He could disable small machines with a single touch, creating bursts of energy that short-circuited their systems. When Alex tossed a broken radio toward him, Max zapped it, and the device sparked back to life. Rachel clapped excitedly. "This is amazing. He's like a living EMP." But Max's powers came at a cost. Each burst of energy left him exhausted, his glowing patterns fading until he collapsed onto the floor. Alex knelt beside him, stroking his fur. "We can't push him too hard," he said firmly. "If we drain him completely, he won't be able to defend himself, or us." Rachel agreed, though she couldn't hide her frustration. "I know, but we don't have time to wait. The Vraxians are getting closer every day. If we don't figure out how to fight back, we're done for." On the fourth night in the warehouse, Max woke suddenly, his glowing patterns flaring brightly. He stood rigid, staring at the door. Alex grabbed the wrench again, his pulse racing. "What is it, boy?" he asked softly. Before Max could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside. The Vraxians had found them. The sound of heavy boots echoed outside the warehouse, each step sending a chill down Alex's spine. Max growled softly, his glowing patterns flickering like warning lights. Rachel grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, her hands trembling but determined. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex nodded, gripping the wrench tighter. He glanced at Max, who was standing protectively in front of them. The little dog's fur shimmered faintly, as if he were preparing for a fight. "Stay close to me," Alex murmured to Rachel, positioning himself between her and the door. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the hum of alien devices scanning the area. Then, with a loud crash, The warehouse doors burst open. A group of Vraxian soldiers stormed inside, their towering forms casting long shadows in the dim light. Their weapons were aimed directly at Alex, Rachel, and Max. One of the soldiers stepped forward, his voice deep and guttural. "You have something that belongs to us. Hand it over." Alex swallowed hard, his mind racing. He knew they were talking about Max. "We don't know what you're talking about," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. The soldier tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Do not test our patience, human. The beast is here. Surrender it now." Max let out a low growl, his glowing patterns intensifying. The soldiers immediately turned their attention to him, their weapons shifting slightly. Rachel took a step back, clutching the pipe tightly. "What do they want with him?" she whispered to Alex. Before Alex could answer, one of the soldiers raised a device that emitted a high-pitched whine. Max whimpered, covering his ears with his paws. The sound seemed to be targeting him, causing him visible pain. Alex couldn't stand it. "Stop," he shouted, stepping forward. "Leave him alone." But the soldiers ignored him, advancing closer. Without thinking, Alex swung the wrench at the nearest soldier, hitting him squarely on the arm. The alien stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Rachel followed suit, swinging her pipe at another soldier. It wasn't much, but it bought them a few precious seconds. "Max, come on," Alex called, scooping the dog into his arms. Together, they ran toward the back of the warehouse, dodging blasts of energy from the soldiers' weapons. The air crackled with electricity as beams narrowly missed them, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Rachel reached the exit first, pushing open a rusted door that led to an alleyway. "This way," she yelled, waving Alex forward. They sprinted through the narrow streets, the sound of pursuit growing fainter behind them. But they knew it wouldn't last long. The Vraxians were relentless. Finally, they ducked into an abandoned building, collapsing onto the floor in exhaustion. Max curled up in Alex's lap, his glowing patterns dimming as he caught his breath. "That was too close," Rachel gasped, leaning against the wall. "They'll find us again unless we figure out a better plan." Alex nodded, his heart still racing. "We can't keep running forever. We need to fight back." Rachel looked at him, her expression grim. "How?" "We're outnumbered and outgunned." Alex glanced at Max, who was watching them intently. "We have him," he said firmly. "If we can figure out how to use his powers without exhausting him, maybe we can turn the tables." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance." As they sat there, catching their breath, Alex realized something important. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for Max. Whatever the Vraxians wanted with him, it wasn't good. And Alex would do whatever it took to keep the little dog safe, even if it meant taking on an entire alien army. For now, they had escaped. But Alex knew the battle was far from over. The trio spent the rest of the night hiding in the abandoned building, their nerves stretched thin. Every creak of the floorboards and distant echo made them flinch, expecting the Vraxians to burst through the door at any moment. Max stayed close to Alex, his glowing patterns dim but steady, as if he were trying to reassure them. Rachel paced back and forth, her mind racing with plans that all seemed too risky. "We can't keep running," she said finally, stopping near a broken window. "Sooner or later, they'll catch us." Alex nodded, his jaw tight. "I know, but we can't just hand Max over to them. Not after what we've seen." Rachel turned to look at him, her expression hardening. "Then we fight. We use Max's abilities to hit them where it hurts. If we can disable even one of their ships, it might buy us some time, or give the rest of humanity a chance to fight back." Alex hesitated. He hated the idea of putting Max in danger, but he knew Rachel was right. They couldn't sit around waiting for the Vraxians to find them. "All right," he said after a long pause. "But we need a plan. Something smart." Together, they began brainstorming. Using scraps of metal and wires from the workshop, Alex built a small device designed to amplify Max's energy pulses. The goal was simple. Instead of relying on Max to zap things directly, they could channel his power into the device and increase its range. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best they could do with the limited resources they had. By morning, the prototype was ready. Alex attached it to a harness they fashioned for Max, making sure it fit snugly without bothering him. "What do you think, boy?" Alex asked, patting the dog gently. Max wagged his tail, seemingly unbothered by the new addition. Rachel tested the device by aiming it at a broken lamp nearby. When Max activated his energy pulse, the lamp shattered, along with every other electronic object in the room. "It works," she said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "Now we just need to pick our target." They decided to strike at night, when the Vraxians would be less likely to expect an attack. Their chosen target was a smaller scout ship hovering near the outskirts of the city. Unlike the massive motherships, this one was lightly guarded and easier to approach. If they could disable it, they might send a message to the invaders and prove that humanity wasn't completely helpless. As darkness fell, Alex, Rachel, and Max made their way cautiously through the streets. The city was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from distant patrols of Vraxian soldiers. Max moved silently beside them, his glowing patterns almost invisible in the shadows. Every step felt like walking on thin ice, but they pressed on, determined to see their plan through. When they reached the edge of the city, the scout ship loomed ahead, its sleek surface gleaming under the moonlight. Two Vraxian guards stood outside, their weapons slung casually over their shoulders. Alex signaled for Rachel to stay back while he and Max crept closer. His heart pounded as they approached, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, they were close enough. Alex whispered to Max, "Do your thing, buddy." Max stepped forward, his glowing patterns flaring brightly as he unleashed a powerful energy pulse. The device amplified it, sending a shockwave toward the ship. Sparks flew as the ship's systems overloaded, its lights flickering wildly before going dark. The guards shouted in confusion, rushing toward the source of the disturbance. "Now!" Alex yelled, grabbing Max and sprinting back to where Rachel waited. Together, they ran as fast as they could, the sound of alarms blaring behind them. For the first time in days, Alex felt a spark of hope. They had struck back and survived. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Vraxians wouldn't forgive such an act of defiance. And next time, they'd come harder and faster. The attack on the scout ship had been a success, but Alex, Rachel, and Max knew it wouldn't go unanswered. By morning, the city was buzzing with activity as Vraxian forces scrambled to investigate the sabotage. Patrols doubled in number, their armored feet pounding the streets like thunder. The invaders were angry, and their frustration made them reckless. Alex and Rachel stayed hidden, watching from the shadows as the aliens searched every corner of the ruined city. "They're looking for us," Rachel whispered, peering through a crack in the wall of their latest hiding spot, a crumbling apartment building. "It's only a matter of time before they find us." Alex nodded, his grip tightening on the wrench he carried everywhere now. "We hit them where it hurt, though. That's something." Max sat quietly beside him, his glowing patterns dimmed as if he were conserving energy. He seemed calmer than usual, almost as if he understood the gravity of what they had done, and the danger that still loomed over them. Alex scratched behind Max's ears, trying to reassure himself as much as the dog. "You did good, buddy," he said softly. "Real good." But their moment of quiet didn't last long. A loud crash echoed from outside, followed by shouts in the guttural language of the Vraxians. Alex froze, his heart skipping a beat. "They're here," he breathed. Rachel grabbed her metal pipe, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to move. Now." The trio bolted toward the back of the building, dodging falling debris as the Vraxians smashed their way inside. Their weapons hummed ominously, firing beams of energy that tore through walls and furniture. Alex ducked just in time to avoid a blast that singed the air above his head. "This way," Rachel shouted, leading them down a narrow staircase into the basement. The basement was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew. They crouched behind a pile of old crates, listening as the Vraxians stomped overhead. Max whimpered softly, his fur bristling with tension. Alex placed a calming hand on his back. "It's okay, boy," he murmured. "Just stay quiet." For a few agonizing minutes, the sounds of destruction filled the space around them. Then, silence. Alex dared to peek out from their hiding spot. The Vraxians were gone. For now. But they couldn't stay here. The aliens would be back. And next time, they might not miss. "We need to get out of the city," Rachel said firmly, wiping sweat from her forehead. "It's too dangerous here. If we can make it to the countryside, we'll have a better chance of staying hidden." Alex hesitated. Leaving the city meant venturing into unknown territory, but staying put was suicide. "All right," he agreed finally, "but we'll need supplies. Food, water, anything we can carry." They spent the next hour scavenging what they could from nearby buildings, moving quickly and staying low to avoid detection. Max trotted alongside them, his glowing patterns flickering faintly. When they finally reached the edge of the city, the open fields beyond felt both terrifying and freeing. For the first time in days, they weren't surrounded by crumbling walls and constant danger. As they walked, Alex noticed something strange about Max. His glowing patterns were growing brighter, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. "What's going on with him?" Alex asked, glancing at Rachel. Before she could answer, Max stopped suddenly, his head snapping up. He growled softly, his body tense. In the distance, a massive Vraxian ship descended from the sky, its shadow stretching across the landscape. From it emerged Commander Ziller himself, his towering form gleaming in the sunlight. "You cannot run forever," Zyler boomed, his voice echoing like thunder. "Surrender the beast, or face annihilation." Alex stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "He's not yours to take," he shouted, his voice trembling but defiant. "If you want him, you'll have to go through us." Ziller tilted his head, studying Alex with cold, unblinking eyes. "Very well," he said, raising a weapon. "Then you shall perish alongside your pet." Max let out a fierce bark, stepping in front of Alex and Rachel. His glowing patterns flared brightly, illuminating the field around them. It was clear he wasn't going to let anyone hurt his friends. For a moment, everything seemed frozen. Then Max unleashed a powerful burst of energy, knocking Ziller and his soldiers off their feet. The ground shook, and the air crackled with electricity. Alex stared in awe as Max stood tall, his tiny frame radiating strength and determination. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, Alex truly believed they had a chance. The energy burst from Max sent shockwaves through the field, knocking Commander Ziller and his soldiers sprawling to the ground. For a moment, everything was still, the hum of alien weapons silenced, the air thick with the smell of scorched earth. Alex stared at Max in disbelief, his heart pounding. The little dog stood firm, his glowing patterns pulsing like a beacon of hope. It was clear now. Max wasn't just a stray or an experiment. He was something extraordinary. Commander Ziller recovered first, shaking off the blast with a snarl. His shimmering scales glinted in the sunlight as he rose to his full height, towering over them. "Impressive," he growled, his voice dripping with menace. "But you cannot win." Rachel gripped her metal pipe tightly, her knuckles white. "We're not giving up," she said, stepping forward to stand beside Alex. "Not while we have him." Ziller's cold eyes narrowed as he studied Max. "You do not understand what you are protecting. The beast is a weapon, a tool meant to serve its creators. You are wasting its potential." Alex clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. "He's not a weapon. He's our friend." and we're not letting you take him." Before Ziller could respond, Max let out another fierce bark, his fur glowing brighter than ever. This time, the energy didn't just knock the Vraxians back. It created a barrier around Alex, Rachel, and himself, shielding them from the aliens' weapons. Beams of light bounced harmlessly off the glowing dome, leaving the trio unharmed. Did he just? Rachel trailed off, staring at the barrier in awe. "He did," Alex replied, his voice filled with pride. "Max, you're incredible." The barrier gave them a brief reprieve, but it wasn't enough to stop the Vraxians entirely. Zyler barked orders to his soldiers, who began regrouping and searching for a way to break through. Alex knew they couldn't stay trapped forever. They needed a plan. "We need to move," Rachel said urgently. "If we can get far enough away, maybe we can lose them." Alex nodded, his mind racing. "Max, can you hold this for a little longer?" Max responded with a determined wag of his tail, his glowing patterns steady despite the strain. With the barrier still intact, Alex and Rachel grabbed their supplies and began running, heading deeper into the countryside. The open field stretched endlessly before them, offering no cover but plenty of space to put distance between themselves and the Vraxians. Behind them, Zolar roared in frustration, ordering his soldiers to give chase. But Max's barrier slowed them down, buying Alex and Rachel precious time. As they ran, Alex couldn't help but glance back at the little dog keeping pace beside him. "You're amazing, Max," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you." Finally, they reached a dense forest, the trees providing much-needed cover. Alex signaled for everyone to stop, and Max lowered the barrier, collapsing onto the ground in exhaustion. His glowing patterns dimmed to almost nothing, and his breathing came in shallow pants. Alex knelt beside him, stroking his fur gently. "You did great, buddy. Rest now." Rachel kept watch, scanning the tree line for any sign of pursuit. "They'll be here soon," she warned. "We need to keep moving." Alex nodded, scooping Max into his arms. "Let's go." As they pressed on through the forest, word of Max's defiance spread among the survivors hiding in the countryside. Small groups of humans emerged from their shelters, inspired by the story of the glowing dog who had stood up to the Vraxians. One by one, they joined Alex and Rachel, forming a ragtag resistance movement united by a single goal: to protect Max and fight back against the invaders. With Max at their side, humanity began to reclaim hope. The Vraxians were powerful, but they had underestimated the strength of a species willing to risk everything for one small, glowing pup. For Alex, Rachel, and the growing number of rebels, the battle was far from over. But as long as Max was with them, they believed they could win. Together, they would face whatever came next, and prove that even the smallest among them could change the course of history. The resistance grew stronger with each passing day. Word of Max's defiance spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of survivors scattered across the countryside. Farmers, shopkeepers, soldiers, and even children joined the cause, armed with whatever weapons they could find: broken tools, kitchen knives, and homemade explosives. They called themselves the Loyal Pack, a name inspired by the brave little dog who had become their symbol of resilience. Alex and Rachel led the group, their bond with Max at the heart of their mission. Max's energy was still limited after his earlier display of power, but he didn't need to fight alone anymore. The humans rallied around him, ready to protect him no matter the cost. Together, they planned their biggest move yet: an assault on Times Square, where Commander Ziller and his forces were rumored to be gathering for a final push against humanity. The night before the battle, Alex sat beside Max, stroking his fur as the dog rested quietly. "You've done so much already," Alex said softly. "Tomorrow, we'll finish this, together." Rachel approached, her face lined with worry, but her eyes blazing with determination. "Are you ready?" she asked. Alex nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The next morning, the Loyal Pack moved into position, hiding in the shadows of ruined buildings surrounding Times Square. The Vraxians had turned the area into a fortress, their ships hovering overhead, and soldiers patrolling the streets below. In the center stood Commander Zillar, his towering form gleaming under the pale sunlight. He seemed confident, as if victory were already his. When the signal was given, the humans launched their attack. Armed with crude weapons and sheer courage, they charged into the square, catching the Vraxians off guard. Chaos erupted as beams of alien energy clashed with human ingenuity. Max stayed close to Alex and Rachel, his glowing patterns flickering faintly as he regained some of his strength. Commander Zillar quickly realized what was happening and roared orders to his troops. "Focus on the beast," he shouted, pointing directly at Max. "Destroy it." But the humans wouldn't let that happen. Dozens of fighters formed a protective circle around Max, shielding him from harm. One man used a makeshift slingshot to hurl rocks at the aliens, while a woman hurled a Molotov cocktail that sent several Vraxian soldiers scrambling. The invaders were overwhelmed by the ferocity of the human counterattack. Seeing their chance, Alex placed the harness back on Max and activated the device they'd built. "Now, Max," he yelled. With a fierce bark, Max unleashed a massive wave of energy, amplified by the device. The pulse rippled outward, disabling every piece of Vraxian technology in its path. Ships sputtered and fell from the sky, weapons overheated and exploded, and shields collapsed entirely. The square shook violently as the invaders' defenses crumbled. Zillar staggered backward, his armor sparking and cracking under the strain. "Impossible," he muttered, staring at Max in disbelief. "It's over," Alex said firmly, stepping forward with Max at his side. "Leave Earth, or face the consequences." For a moment, Zillar hesitated. Then, with a low growl, he signaled for retreat. The remaining Vraxians scrambled aboard their damaged ships, fleeing the battlefield as quickly as they could. As the last ship disappeared into the sky, cheers erupted from the humans. They had won. In the days that followed, the survivors began rebuilding their world. Max became a legend, celebrated as the hero who had saved humanity. But to Alex and Rachel, he was still just their loyal pup, wagging his tail and bringing joy wherever he went. As they stood together in the ruins of Times Square, watching the sunrise paint the sky in colors of hope, Alex looked down at Max and smiled. "We did it, buddy," he said. "Thanks to you." Max barked happily, his glowing patterns shimmering softly in the dawn light. Against all odds, a tiny dog had changed the course of history and shown the universe that even the smallest beings could make the biggest difference.